Welcome to podcast 21
Blackjack
of the
bitches.
discussion. Hail ye of discussions of your last three brain cells. This is following up podcast 20, which originally posted had no audio for our audio only podcast. So big shout out to Joe for shooting me that text that, hey, your podcast doesn't have any audio. So I had to fix that. And so now 20 is up. I don't know if anyone tried to listen to that and went, there's no audio here, and then gave up. But there should be audio now. So thank you for your patience, and thank you, Joe, for the heads up. Marcus was just talking. Oh, yep.
How many followers or listeners are we at?
I think we're at 18 subscribers.
Oh, whoa. Wow.
Yeah.
Fucking big city ballin'.
Yeah, we could just quit our jobs and just full time just do this.
Oh, totally. I'll just stop going to work.
Right. We'll record 8 podcasts a day. It'll be great. It'll be perfect. But yes. So we're at 18 loyal followers. So yeah, thank you everyone for listening. But Marcus was just talking about people who are crabby.
Yeah.
Kinda.
Oh, this is where I talk now. Okay. So,
Yeah.
I'm not saying, okay, so there are people who I've talked to during the past year, who, and I can, I can understand it, I guess, but, I think they're a little misguided, who believe that living in the U.S. is kind of bullshit, and they don't like it here and they want to move to other places, which is fine, but I think they're a little I don't know. I think they don't realize how good and easy we have it here in the United States, for the most part. Obviously, there are people here who are neglected and are struggling, but the majority of us really have it pretty good here. If we want to go get food, we can go, for the most part, without having to worry about being shot. To a grocery store. We have all these abilities
outside
and
of
options.
Chicago.
Yeah, I mean outside of Chicago. Yeah, but we have all these abilities. Most of us have power. We're not there is discrimination, but discrimination happens everywhere and will continue to happen for all of humanity.
Well, and most of the discrimination in our country is not fucking the Hootsies and Tutsus, whatever the fuck they are.
Yeah.
Most of the discrimination in our country is people saying mean things, and maybe some people not getting hired when they should have, or people not getting accepted into college. It's not, we're going to take your specific cultural group and kill all of them.
Yeah. And that's really what I'm getting at. You might not be happy with the current situations if you're a big BLM supporter or something like that. Good for you. But you might not be happy
Bureau
with
of Land Management.
Huh?
No one should support the Bureau of Land Management.
Oh, yeah, no. But fuck, you really kind of derailed me there. Anyways, heavy monologue session here. But obviously there's some injustices and stuff like that, and I'm not saying it's cool to ignore that or not acknowledge it, but we really do have it easy. It's never been easier to live on this earth than it is right now. And I just think people think that if they move to a different country like England or other places, that they won't experience these inequalities. But we don't hear about England's inequalities and stuff like that as much because we live in the United States. We don't live in England, where they advertise it, or not advertise it, but where they talk about it. Because anywhere you go, there's going to be problems, there's going to be racism, there's going to be some kind of hardship to endure or something like that. And just by leaving the U.S., you're not gonna have those not be displayed or be brought up in your life. Wherever you go, every country has every country has people who bad government officials who are bribed and stuff like that, and it's part of life at this point. Anywhere you go, you're going to experience these things, but from a general perspective and a general Um, just from a general stance, it's never going to be any easier or any better if you go to like a different country. Like we have it really good here. That's all
I
I'm
feel
saying.
like though some people moving out of college don't really know where they want to end up, and a lot of people will move and immigrate other places. And
Yeah,
if they want to do that, that's their decision.
yeah, that's
But
fine.
if they don't want to move, like if they were like, I want to move, but then they don't move, like it's kind of like, well, you must not want to move too bad. It's like a little kid when they're like, I don't like this food. Like, well, it's what we're eating tonight. So if you don't eat this, you're just gonna get hungry, and then you're gonna figure out that you don't really care what this is. It'll be
Yeah.
fine.
And who
But
knows? Go on.
I find like a lot of people, America is we hold ourselves to a really high standard, and so like when people around the world are like, yeah, fucking America's the best. We earned that reputation, and then like there's responsibility that comes with America being the best, and we have this expectation that America is the single greatest place on earth to live. And when you set your bar low and you're like, well, we all have water that is wet, and we all have food most of the time, like we check all those boxes.
Yeah.
But we're not trying to compare ourselves to a war-torn African country. Like if we compare ourselves to any war-torn country, we're gonna be like killing it. Like we're doing great. But that doesn't matter where we're at. They're at a different point in they have their own problems and they're dealing with their own stuff. But we're trying to get to a better America. And by having these complaints, it's annoying, but it's like when you get feedback on your paper, it's like that's what you can actively improve on is the areas that you're not doing as great.
So
So, yeah, a lot of people are like mad, but
I complaints, yes, but specifically in regards to the people going like, oh, I'm gonna go live in Canada, or I'm gonna go live outside of the country. Like that's
Oh,
not
yeah.
a complaint. That's throwing a hissy fit.
right. But
That's going. I don't want to
What's the
finish my
classic line?
piece.
what's the classic line? Well, there's a Henry Ford line, and it's don't find fault, find a remedy. Anybody can complain. And what's the other one? Oh, a complaint without a solution
Yeah.
is whining.
If
And it's
you
like, well, if you're
if
gonna
you're
just whine,
working
it's not
somewhere
productive.
and you find a problem with something, it is your responsibility to figure out at least 2 solutions to that problem to bring to your immediate supervisor. Unless it is something like you can't fix, like, hey, this $300 billion piece of equipment that these engineers built, that all I do is sit here and press this button. Yeah, this button doesn't work anymore. Yeah, all right, cool. But like, if you work somewhere, like you work at Walmart and there's an inventory issue, and you're going to go up to your boss and be like, hey, there's an inventory issue. Like that's completely and totally waste of time. All you're doing is he's gonna look at you and go like, yeah, I know. You got a solution? No? Shut the fuck up. Because
Right.
you're not actually you're not contributing to a solution. You're just becoming part of the problem. You're just deciding to bitch now because you want to bitch.
And there are instances there where it's like the solution might be telling someone like, but this is not what we're talking about. We're talking about these situations where it's like, well, we have this problem that we can fix. If you want America to be the place that you want to live, make it the place that you want it to be. So
I think the big issue with that, like with that is, first of all, in order to fix a problem, you have to have a group of people agree that there is a problem or what problem needs to be fixed. Because if you have a group of people and they go, or you have an apartment complex, there's no snow removal, everyone is responsible for shoveling. If everyone just decides, well, we don't need to shovel, that's not a problem. Doesn't matter how high the snow gets, they're going to be like, it's not a problem. There's no problem here. It doesn't matter if one person goes, well, I have a little fucking foreign car that sits only 4 inches above the ground, and if there's 10 inches of hardpack, I can't get into the garage. The fucking dudes would lift the truck and be like, so, you fix it. That's not a problem. So if you have if there is a problem that exists, if people don't agree that there's a problem, there's no problem. And I don't mean that isn't a problem doesn't exist. I mean that there is no recognized problem and it's not going to be addressed as such.
Yeah, there's an identified problem that we're all working against, or just things that could get fixed. I suppose would be a better way to put it. Like, this is something that could improve, but if nobody sees it as an issue, then it's not gonna get deemed a problem, get fixed.
And that's
And
most of politics. Most of politics from a top-down perspective of influencing voters is convincing people that there's a problem and then convincing them that you're going to fix that problem.
What I've noticed too with politicians is like when a politician, so Tulsi Gabbard was on a podcast I listened to, and her big thing was the
Was
environment.
it Jocko?
Yeah, this is the only podcast I listen to. Whatever. But she's big environment. She's from Hawaii, and she's like, we have this amazing natural resource. We need to be conscious of this environment. And so she went to Congress, or wherever she ended up to start, but she was this big environmental pusher. And when people are focused on one issue, or like Katie Porter is another example. She's all finance. When you talk to that person, they know a ton about finance, and they know the ins and outs and what needs to get fixed, and they might be literally an expert on that topic. But there's a whole 95% of the rest of the stuff that's getting dealt with that they don't know dick about.
Yeah.
So what happens is everyone starts cutting deals because it's like, well, I don't give a shit about roads as long as they don't touch the water. Like, if I'm an environmentalist. That's the only reason I'm here. I don't care about this scientific research. I don't care about X, Y, what we're doing here or there. So it gives them all this room to maneuver and to get, like, I'll vote for this if you vote for my thing. And then it just becomes that's the entire game. I just elbowed it out of my table.
good job.
But yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
And,
Oh, go on.
no, you talk. You don't ever talk.
Okay, so Keegan, what you basically said beforehand was kind of like what I originally had in mind, and I totally forgot about it because I'm a dumbass. But I forgot what it's called in psychology, but like you can't there's like so many levels and steps in psychology, in like a mental health or fuck it. Anyways, so like what you were talking about, like, you can't focus on racial inequalities. You can't even get running water or food. So like we have all these
All the
things.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you. Holy shit. So yeah, like you can't progress and worry about other items unless you don't have the basics or like the necessities figured out first. So like a lot of these countries still have these problems with their infrastructure and everything else, and we don't. So we can move on to the next higher like meaning thing, and like that's where we're at right now. We're working on these little things, which they're not little to someone who's affected by them, by like who's
But we got the hard shit figured out.
we have the hard shit figured out.
sewers.
And that's
And
what I'm
roads.
trying. That's what I was kind of getting at beforehand, but I think he can set it in a much better way. Yeah, that's what I was going to kind of say. I think you covered that part really well. What were you going to say, Max?
Nice.
I don't remember.
Do we want to transition to the other thing that Marcus you wanted to talk about, or do we want to talk to Max about his Wendigo hunting trip?
What do you what? I don't have a preference really. If Max would like to talk about his Wendigo hunting trip right now,
Do you want to tell us about your?
I stayed in a tent with a sleeping bag for a week.
Did you sleep in the sleeping bag, or just were in there with it?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to chat about your escapades?
I mean, we didn't really do much.
Get sexually harassed by a Sasquatch?
No.
Just kinda
No.
hung out.
Yeah, it wasn't like we weren't really out there to do anything. The crew were out there because it was gunnery, so strikers were out there just breaking constantly. Just sit around, be bored, bullshit, be hungry, eat a fuck ton, somehow still come back later than I went out.
You had to thermoregulate, fight
Yeah.
off all them.
Oh,
And
dude, we got lucky as fuck. We had a warm ass week. The company that was out there before us, they had to deal with about 1.5 feet, 2 foot of snow, and it got down to about -25. And we had above 40 every single day. Yeah,
Nice.
it's interesting.
Did you like work out while you're out there? Probably not.
No, not beside. I mean, I walked a fuck ton just being out there, but we didn't like specifically work out. We like did a little bit of training and shit that you could count as working out if you wanted to. I
Fair
don't,
enough.
but yeah,
Yeah.
So, Marcus, what was the other thing you wanted to talk about?
Other thing was a conversation I was having with Joe and Olivia, who I will be living with very shortly. Olivia, for you people do not know, is a women's rugby player for the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point.
Why don't you just throw her social security number out there too?
Yeah,
Weirdo.
wow, okay. Well, I'm not going to tell you her last name. Wow, you already have enough information on her, I guess. Anyways, so,
Physical description,
yeah,
address,
address,
date of birth,
yeah.
Bitcoin
So,
wallet.
last
anyways,
name.
So people who I will be seeing a lot in the short time. Anyways, we were
I'm
having a
sure they're
conversation.
happy that you keep talking about them.
Yeah.
What were you guys talking about?
Anyways, so we were talking about the problem with like American healthcare because I was reading out loud this like Instagram post by Tim Kennedy, and basically my conclusion was like, hey, we need to take personal responsibility in our health and well-being because obesity is one of the biggest influencers in like
Yeah. Obesity
How
and
did you
oral
get that
hygiene.
from?
Huh?
How did you get that from the Tim Kennedy post?
'Cause
What was the post about?
The
It
fat
was-
fuck sitting in front of the McDonald's.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. And it was about
And
like history and
Probably the link between obesity and COVID.
yeah. But anyways,
Like COVID,
there's
like
Very
COVID
significant.
deaths. Not
Yeah.
necessarily just COVID.
specifically.
so I was talking about how we need to take personal responsibility because it's our body and we do what we want with it. But like if
Yeah,
we,
it's my
if we
body. I'll
don't
cry
wanna-
if I want to.
Yeah, like so if we don't want to have, if we don't want to be as susceptible to like stuff like the coronavirus and other things, we should take it into our own personal interest to do it. And everyone has some kind of time to do it, and even if it's just like doing like push-ups, sit-ups, like body weight squats in your room for like 20 minutes, you know, it's something.
I would set the bar lower than that even.
So
Eating half decent and going on a walk a day
Oh,
is
So-
enough for
that's a good
probably
one.
90% of the population.
I would agree with pretty much everything except that I am inherently biased towards believing that people need more exercise than a half an hour walk a day.
Oh,
But I also
you know,
understand that
like,
most
that's
people
enough.
are not capable of such. Now the real question, or like the real exercise comes down to, or mental exercise comes down to, this is something that people should take individual responsibility for. This is something that you should inherently hold yourself responsible for. Because if you don't, you will face individual repercussions. But if we want people to take personal responsibility for it, how do we incentivize people to get out there and actually do the right thing in a way that encourages but does not force? Because if one thing that trends amongst people left to their own free will is very obvious, is people will choose the easy road over the hard road.
Let's start a new religion. And if you are fat, you are a bad person. It's a sin.
Isn't that like, isn't that's somewhere? Oh,
That's a thing.
it's in everyone. It's gluttony.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Anyways,
But, yeah. We could make it a patriotic thing because if you're obese and then America gets under attack for of a multitude of reasons, it's harder to take care of you. If something was to happen to you, you are a greater load on the system. You are not capable of helping yourself or others.
yeah. But what I was talking to them is they had a different approach. They were talking about how the government should regulate more items and what's
No.
being put into our food and everything. I'm just like,
It's the wrong.
no.
It's the wrong answer. Because it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're good. So like, what I was just saying, like, I think that's stupid because then we're relying on something what we can't like. You shouldn't have to rely on someone for something as simple as like your personal health. I mean, like, it's not simple, but it's also simple because it's just like, for the most part, if you're exercising and eating well, you're more likely to be, um, you'll have more likely to have a healthy like living, uh,
So
whatever, fuck words. But like they were talking about like all these chemicals and stuff like that, and um, how if you're poor, it's hard to eat healthy and stuff like that, and all the shitty
which
food is the cheap food.
having been poor is like I kind of call bullshit. Because
I would,
yes, it is harder to have a very well balanced diet, but you can 100 like I used to feed me and my wife on $40 a week, and I was about 220 pounds, 230 pounds. I had two
You're a
meals
big
a
boy.
week that I wouldn't eat at my house, and I was lifting fucking 6 days a week, 7 days a week. Like
that's
but I have the advantage of my parents have been very big my whole life on cooking, and we make everything from scratch. Whenever you buy whole ingredients and take that little bit extra time, and I was also very disciplined in the way I ate. But that argument just pisses me off. It's not that you can't; it's that you don't want to.
In some
like
areas, it's hard to find food. Like, not necessarily like find it like it's around, but like access to a decent grocery store that has decent produce.
That was
So there's an
Walmart.
argument. Yeah, but that's like
Anecdotal
there's
though.
always a way to find it. Yeah,
yeah,
but they call them, is it like a food desert or something, where all you can find within a reasonable distance is like 7-Elevens. So like if you live in the downtown Chicago, and that's where you live, and you don't have a car, it's
Now,
much more difficult to get somewhere. But that's an entirely different question
yeah,
than like,
yeah.
can we eat better at an individual level?
I'm talking whole like as a mass. Like I'm not specifically talking about an impoverished person in like Chicago. Like that's what they were kind of like trying to get at.
well,
I'm just like, no, I'm just saying as a
There's
whole.
always exceptions. Like
Yeah,
if you write a rule and it covers 95% of people, if you make it cover 100% of people, it's only going to cover and apply to 95%. Like there's always exceptions because there's so many variables that go into place,
yeah.
which is why it's hard to put in like a hard or fast rule on this. It's like we as a
well,
society should not punish people for eating poorly, but we should incentivize people for eating better.
and that's
Oh,
also why like really vague connotation, but or not connotation, but like just connection here. It's like it's why most government should be most the government that should have the most influence out your life should be the lowest level of government that you come into contact with daily, right?
yeah.
Because like take Wisconsin, take Stevens Point, the county of Portage County, the state of Wisconsin, and United States of America. Do you think Congress up on the White House is going to know how to make a positive economic benefit for Stevens Point or Portage County? Probably not.
No, no.
Why would they give a fuck? It's 25. Portage County is about 100, 110,000 people. Why the fuck would they care? There's more people in the there's like 10 times as many people in just the Washington D.C. metropolitan area. And the state of Wisconsin, they might care a little bit more, but do they actually know how adjusting a certain rule or regulation in the timber industry is going to specifically affect the paper mills, which is one of the largest job suppliers in Portage County? They might, but probably not. Would Portage County? Would the mayor of Stevens Point? Yeah, because he probably has family that works there. He probably has friends that work there.
Even up to like a state level, you're dealing with something a lot closer.
Yeah.
And like Stevens Point's a good example for this because there's a lot of walking paths. There's a lot of culture around like being healthy and fit. A lot of people ride bikes. There's a lot of bike access to things. There's bike parking. There is like outdoor activities in the summer where it's like walk to the park and get food and hang out and listen to music. And there's a really awesome farmers market system where you can get really good, fresh, cheap produce.
Yeah.
And like that's awesome.
But
So
so I would Go ahead, Marcus.
Okay. So the other thing what I was gonna say is like, yeah, I know like a box of macaroni and cheese you can buy for like 33 cents, which will feed you. But like, it's
Off
not
brand.
the yeah off brand. But like it's not the best thing. But like frozen vegetables, you can buy a bag of frozen vegetables at Walmart for 88 cents. Obviously, you're gonna want something else to go with the vegetables. But like, you can eat relatively healthy, cheap too.
I mean,
Like
you can get
what Max was saying.
a pound of ground beef. Like you can get cheap ground beef, like not the best, but if you get 80-20 ground beef, you can get it for I think it's $3.98 a pound at Walmart,
Yeah.
maybe
So like,
4.25,
there you
and
go.
then you
You
can
got
go
vegetables
pick
and meat.
up a bag of long grain white rice for fucking a pound for
50-pound bag for $8 or whatever.
yeah, and it's not the best, but it's carbs, and you do
It's
that, you throw a multivitamin on top of it, and the multivitamin might be like $10 for a month worth, and that's a bigger purchase, but you do that, that's fucking pound of ground beef and the veggies and the rice. That's dinner for 3 days.
yeah. It's very manageable, I think. So
Yeah,
But
it's just living that lifestyle sucks.
well,
Like
and,
meal prepping and eating the same thing every day, it takes a lot of discipline, and
it
people
does.
don't like that.
well,
It's
and
way
the other
easier to
thing,
just go to the cafeteria and get a
one of
quesadilla.
one of the big things that we've lost as a country is food, or specifically amongst white people, is food history, is food cultural history.
Did you
There's
just refer to the whites?
yes, to the whites, because most of us will find casseroles and shitty unseasoned meat more familiar to us than the food that our great grandparents would have made, having still remembered what it was like coming from Europe. And it's like,
Kielbasa and sauerkraut, and
yeah,
I'm not even going to name some of the Scottish ones because I don't know if that counts as food.
if you go back, and maybe not the Scottish ones, but if you go back and you actually look at cooking like that and you cook most of the things from scratch, like, it's healthy, it's well balanced. You're getting a very varied diet with a lot of nutrient dense food. It's not super calorie heavy, and it's cheap. But
Really cheap.
over the past 60 to 80 years in America, if you were in the middle class, you forgot how to cook. You don't know how to cook because a couple reasons. We've seen the increase for a while. A measure of wealth was microwaves and microwavable dinners and casseroles, and it was a sign of I was doing well that I was eating a hungry man dinner in front of the TV with my kids. It wasn't so much as it is now, where it's I'm considered doing well off if I'm making a homemade meal with my family and sit down at the table every night.
Or going out to eat 3-4 times a week.
And that was a very common thing too. But it's like I've tried incredibly hard to figure out the food from like where my families came from and stuff. But I've had a lot of cooking experience, sitting down, cooking with my mom, cooking with my dad, and that's something that very much stopped happening. You want to be a real. Maybe this will get me in trouble with the people that call people sexists, but with the increase in like feminist movements in like the late 50s and 60s where they were working more and stuff, food is very commonly in our culture passed along by women. Like my dad learned how to cook mostly from his mom. I learned how to cook from my mom, who learned from her grandmother. Like and as women became a lot more prominent in the workforce and it stopped being about staying home and being a housewife, they started to resent their mother's cooking in the kitchen. And that's not something that a young man's going to go, hey mom, teach me how to cook. Like, does it happen? Absolutely it happens. I'm example A. But it's not a very common thing. And you lose that food cultural history. And you don't, whenever you lose that cultural history, not only are you losing the ability of understanding the food and culture from which you came from, because most culture, most stories, most families, the gathering room of the house is the kitchen. If you really associate with a family structure, you will spend most of the time in the kitchen. because you have 3 meals a day you have to eat, and some of them can be big fucking deals. Like, think about Thanksgiving or Christmas. Where are you going to spend most of the day? Like, as you grow up, as you're not like fucking, when you're not 7 or 8 years old anymore, whenever you start being 17, 18, 24,
You help in the kitchen.
you're in the kitchen because that's where all the adults are, and that's where you hear the old stories of grandma and grandpa and their grandparents, and you hear the stories of like back in Europe and stuff, and all the weird shit that you don't hear other places. But whenever people lose that, they also just don't know how to cook at all, and it makes it much more intimidating for people to try new things. And I'll shut up now because I've been rambling for like 5 minutes.
No, you're good. I would raise that it's become easier with all of the resources we have to expose yourself to new foods.
Yes.
And it's weird because, like, if you lose that cultural history, you're like, oh, I don't know what foods are from my culture. Like, if I am like really Norwegian, what did the Norwegians eat? Lefse and like sad
Lutefisk.
fish. Like, what do we?
Yeah.
Lutefisk, great. But like, that's not actually what Norwegians eat. It's
No.
And like the lefse we have is not equivalent to the lefse they have. And it's this disconnect. But then you can just Google, like, how do I make a lefse?
Yeah.
And you might find in your resource that, hey, lefse's kind of not worth making. But you can just buy some here and you can try it. And then if you like it, you can figure out how to make it. But then there's all these other dishes that you can learn to cook. So, like,
Well, it's
Katie...
It's like shoe fly pie. Who the fuck, like, most people now would be like, who the fuck's gonna eat shoe fly pie? It's a pie crust with spare butter, flour, brown sugar, and salt.
What the fuck?
Yeah,
It sounds awesome.
It's depression food. Or, like, not depression, like, it's Great Depression food. But
that was like lefse that made it to the U.S. is actually called lumpa if you go back to Norway. So the little weird flaky potato pancakey lefse is like depression lefse. It's like because all the Norwegians that came to the U.S. were like worker, not
as most people
super
are.
Right.
Except for
and so they brought that, like, this is our lefse, and they're like, no, that's your sad lefse.
Yeah.
Like, your happy lefse is awesome.
I like it. Didn't picture this or envision this going this way, but I like this. This is actually good content. Wow.
But it's weird. I've been thinking about a lot of this too. Is when you look at a problem and you are like mad at it. I look at this too for like when you're nervous. Like if you're like when I was in high school, if I was going out to go wrestle somebody, you get nervous and you feel that, and a lot of people don't like that feeling. But a way you can get over it is to reframe it. And I don't remember where it came from, and probably from my dad. But when you are nervous, it's your body is preparing and excited to do what you are about to do. So like before a football game, every single person that is invested in the game is going to go to the bathroom and like they're going to clear their guts and their bowels, and then their blood is going to move to the specific, like you're having this very visceral response. But some people hate that feeling and they're nervous and it makes them fuck up. But another way you can look at it is, well, I'm invested in this thing, I want it to go well, and so does my body, my spirit is invested. So if you don't give a shit about a problem, you're not going to have that.
Yeah.
So when we identify a problem, you're like, oh, like I wish our society was not fat. What's the solution to that? Well, we can yell at all the fat people and be like,
which is fun.
But that's one solution. It's this negative solution. Or we can go, we have these fundamental failures, but what's the solution to this? Well, the solution to it is have fun and explore food and cook new food and take responsibility and grow as a person and believe in something. And like it's really fun to be like, well, I kind of don't like the food I'm eating. I don't like my diet. Like, what do? You can eat shit and just give up. Or you can like invest a little bit of time and effort, do a little bit of learning, buy a wok from Walmart for $6 and just start making shit. And it's kind of fun when you can change it up and be like, well, this isn't a problem. This is an opportunity to get better. And let's go do that thing. Like Katie came right when we moved to where we're at now. She was homesick, but not for Texas, for like Singapore, where she grew up. And so I'm like, well, what dishes do you guys eat in Singapore? And she's like, us, and we looked it up, and then we found a couple that we could make. So we started making these dishes, and so we can make char kway chow now. We can make what's the other one? Chicken satay, and we've made Indian food, and it's really fun to learn this because you can find a lot of great resources, and like, so we solved this problem with a positive solution. So I don't know.
No, and that's a great thing, but it gets really tough whenever you start trying to influence people outside of your general social structure, and like the general like social like level that you're in society, to put it in a poor way. Whenever you actually have to start, like, what do you do with someone? Because we all come from somewhere where we have a very cultural background of fitness, where I grew up in a fit family. You grew up in a fit family. Marcus obviously grew up in a family that promoted some level of health and wellness.
What are you talking about? We have no connections to fitness whatsoever.
Fuck no. None at all. How do you take people without like literally adopting them and taking them under your wing, but actually spreading out and like getting people? How do you take people who live in the last time anyone in their family did any sort of exercise was 3 generations ago, whenever their fucking grandfathers used to plow the fields by hand, and take them and go like, all right, well, you're gonna start like, you're gonna clean up your eating habits. You're not going to eat at McDonald's for 5 meals a week. You're going to go outside. Even if you don't do anything, you're just going to be outside. Like, you're going to do a little bit. Like, how do you get people to accept that this is a change they need to make in their lives and overcome that hard hurdle of going, there is a problem with me, and there is a solution to this problem that is fixable. Or there is a way that this problem is fixable, and there are solutions that are being presented.
So now we're looking at it not from like an individual level, but like if we were going to like some leaderships and like the Stephen or
because we are
like, hey, yeah, right,
and simply because we all know people in our lives that could actively benefit from getting off their fucking ass, going outside, eating some fucking broccoli, and walking for half an hour a day. Because
also, broccoli is good.
Yeah,
like it's not hard to make broccoli good. Everyone complains about broccoli. I've never had an issue cooking broccoli, and when I was growing up, I loved broccoli. And then I went to school, and to be fair, I think when you make industrial amounts of broccoli, it's easy to fuck up. Yeah. But it's also, like, I don't know if you should make 400 pounds of broccoli at a go. But either way, then you get back out from high school where all food's kind of gross just because that's the way they make it. And then you, like, rediscover broccoli. It's like, broccoli's fucking great.
It also makes you poop. But
yes, it does.
This is something that I think is actually a really important talking point, because if we're trying to figure out how to actually fix this as a society, it requires individual change and personal responsibility from those that are actively able to tackle the problem, to go out there, find those that are willing to change and help them and affect them, because those that actually make that transition from that sort of lifestyle into an active, healthy lifestyle where they're promoting wellness are the ones that are most likely going to be able to reach out and bring people from that other side back over here into being athletic, into caring about themselves. So how, as young leaders essentially, at least in this aspect, do we affect the people in our lives that we know could do more fitness and clean up their diets so that they may be able to reach out and help someone else along the way?
Marcus, what do you think?
I think it's not necessarily the easiest way, but just be like, take your own responsibility and do what you can, and kind of like lead by example. So if someone sees that you're doing this and that you're achieving something like end goal, say maybe try and lose some weight, so people will notice that, and then maybe they'll ask you what you're doing to do that, or like what you're doing to achieve that goal. Then maybe they'll take interest upon it themselves, and then kind of go from there. I don't know if that makes sense. I probably could have worded that better, but excuse me.
So I don't know. I think lead by example is always a right answer, but I don't think it is necessarily the first step in this. I think it is a solid middle step, and it's something that is always important to be doing. But if people don't notice you and have no reason to pay attention to you, leading by example, while it's still a good thing to be doing and something you should be putting a lot of effort into, is living the lifestyle that you preach, because then people will take you seriously. It is not the one that's necessarily going to reach people the most, because it requires a lot of observation from someone else to actually see that, hey, you're doing this.
I would like to look at this from kind of two angles, because from an individual point of view, your ability to impact somebody else's life is phenomenal, but in this way it's hard to be like, hey, roommate, you eat like shit and you feel like shit and then you don't get the things you need to do to get done. You should eat better. Having that conversation, like I only have one roommate that eats like shit, so it's like, yeah, even if I maximize my capacity on that, it's a one person thing. And like I talk to my coworkers, but all my coworkers, like, we eat pretty good, so it's like, well, so at an individual level, I think Marcus is in the right vein. Like, you gotta support people when they come to you. You gotta lead by example. You gotta be a good person about it and be interested in what people want to do. Like, if somebody's like, hey, like, what do you do for your diet? Like, what's this? I'm like, well, what do you do for your diet? Where are you at? That's what I'm doing. Like, how, like, and give and take, and just be a good conversationalist with it. But then, if you want to look at it from a larger perspective, like if you were going to be like a city council, and you're like, we want our community to be healthier. We don't want to be the most fit community on earth. We don't want to be that area that's like the hot spot and it's 170 years old. But if we want to make this community healthier, like what do we do at a community level or like a county level or even a state level to push that direction? And I would say...
Is that a question, or do you have something that's going to follow up?
I'm kind of leading, and I have like something you could, like a philosophy you could apply to it, but at the same time, I'd like to hear what you guys say. So, like, because at individual level, it's hard because you just don't run into that many people. And the people we attract because of the people that we are generally on the fitter side because we hang out with athletes and we go to the weight room and we...
And being in the Army, I'm in a vastly different perspective where the people around me being in an actual leadership position, I can have a direct influence on their life and make them do certain things.
This is much more true.
And sometimes I forget that.
Yeah. But I would like, yeah.
What
would you say to both of those, Max?
Well, I forgot what the first one is, but the city council one, I think as... You need to start promoting more things that are generally healthy, just generally outdoorsy, and making more opportunities available, right? Like, I don't think...
You can't make it harder to get McDonald's, but you can make it easier to get
something
grass-fed beef.
Yeah, right? and it's like... I don't think getting rid of vending machines with diet or with Coke in them is the right thing to do, because Coke's not the problem. It's whenever you drink 30 of them a day that's the fucking problem. You drink a Coke a day, yeah, maybe it'd be better if you didn't, but that's not what's going to kill you. It's going to be 12-ounce Coke's like 120, 180 calories, and yeah, it's 120, 180 calories of all sugar, but you'll manage if it's just one of them a day. I mean, you spend an hour on your feet, you're fucking... It's gone. But
right. It's same thing with like energy drinks. Like, you probably shouldn't drink 40, but having 4 a week is not going to kill you.
Yeah, well, and it's like promoting things at the lowest level. So I think the key to actually solving or reducing the problem is influencing parents and influencing children. The government-funded knowledge, or like the general government knowledge as we know it of nutrition, is mostly wrong and promotes the wrong habits and is all about do exactly this because we said so, instead of teaching people what's actually out there. Like, have in-depth health classes starting at a younger age. Like, have a nutrition class. Like, why shouldn't a 3rd grader have a general understanding of nutrition? Like, you're telling me a third through a 6th grader isn't smart enough to understand proteins, carbohydrates, and fats at a very basic level? I think you're wrong.
You probably don't need to have a whole devoted course, but you could put that in a lot of different courses and be like, hey, this is something that is important for you to understand.
My kind of like reasoning with making it a specific course is because if you just threw it into a science class or something, it would...
a section.
Yeah, and people are going to just phase out. And it's like, oh, well, I took science in 4th grade. And I don't think they'll pay as much attention to it because it's going to get downgraded or relegated, and it's going to be like a month, and they're going to forget it. But if it's an actual class where it's like, no, I took nutrition, along with PE in 4th grade, 5th grade. Like, they might actually remember it. And it's, honestly, I think you need to take the approach that a lot of places are starting to take with sex ed, where you introduce with bits and pieces that are age appropriate, that they can accomplish at that age. And we're not just going to teach abstinence only, or put a condom on, and that's the end of it. You actually teach them about it. You teach them about, like, risks and fallacies and common things, and you start talking about the social stigmas and pressures and, like, resources for help and actual issues. At least how my schools taught health class, like sex ed, and opening up, being like, hey, like, we're not going to tell you how to eat. We're not going to tell you, like, oh, like, just don't eat McDonald's. We need to teach self-regulation. Like, oh, well, this is what this diet is. This is what this diet is. This is what this diet is. This is what this nutrient does. This is what an amino acid is. Like, and you're gonna have to have higher level and lower level classes. Like, I don't think that everyone wants to sit there and learn what the 9 essential branch chain amino acids are. I don't think most people give a fuck. But some people are going to, and having that information just available at, like, a high school level, eventually it'll get around. And the more people that go through it, the more people that learn it, the more they'll influence the people around them too. And I think it's that combined with better PE classes, where we go back to PE being more about physical training and understanding stuff, along with recreational activities and stuff. But if they're going to be recreational activities, they're not just the gym teacher going, well, go walk around the track for an hour. Like, they're actually out there, like, what are recreational sports that people can play that'll actually get them off their ass and out there doing something, get them out in the community, go and do different things.
I was in my high school. There was athletic conditioning, which was like if you were an athlete, you could go and you would, like, weightlift as a course. There was team sports, which was like you would put on actual gym clothes and, like, play dodgeball or basketball, and you learned all the rules. You could play like co-ed, like city level, like volleyball. You could play. But then there was rec sports, where they would actually actively walk, and they'd, like, go to the bowling alley, or they would play badminton.
With the same thing.
Right.
And then on top of that, it's not only kids, but parents. Because who is, even, like, bad homes, who is the people that these kids are interacting with the most on a daily basis? And who is most of their, like, daily eating life's going to be based around? It's going to be at the whims of their parents, more than likely. So you need to have a certain level of buy-in from their parents. So figuring a way to get that community outreach, get out to the parents and talk to them, especially ones with, like, younger children. Because the ones with older children, typically the parents are going to be a bit older and, like, more focused on other things than necessarily changing eating habits and, like, influencing good habits in the kids and stuff. And, like, not that they shouldn't be tried to reach out to them, but I just think it's going to be a little less likely than younger parents. But getting out there and, like, making an effort, providing more opportunities for them to do active activities with their kids, more, like, parent-kid soccer team type things, or, like, parents-kid bicycle races. And
to be fair, if I was playing parent-kid soccer, I would be doing so good.
Yeah. But it would be important to get out to the rest of the community too, but I think focusing around it and starting around the schools and the families in the schools would be the way to attack it, primarily as a community.
That's just the way stuff works. Like, I know in Germany, like, everyone under the age of, I think, 30 now speaks English.
Yeah.
Because they just were like, everyone now learns English in school. That's just how it is. Every single person that's, like, if you went through German public schooling and you're under, like, 30 probably now, you speak English.
Yeah.
It's like, you do that the same thing for nutrition.
Yeah. Like, there's some really basic concepts that, like fully functioning, like, really smart adults don't understand, and it's just mind-boggling, that are incredibly simple. They just have had no exposure to them.
Like learning how to read. Some people don't know how to read, and it's just like, hey.
Here's a book. When you learn, you stupid bitch.
Speaking of people not knowing what the fuck is going on, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is an interesting talking point.
Oh,
how it got recalled.
So
or
it did
something?
not get recalled. It got paused. So there was 6. I think they called them critical blood clots in women, led to 1 death and 1 critical care stay, severe condition kind of thing. So there's a couple ways to look at it. It's so when you make a vaccine, the testing goes like a group of 100 people or even less to a group of like 1,000 people to a group of 10,000 people. So there's things that happen that are so rare that you don't catch them in 10,000 people. And that's part of the clinical process. So like if I was to develop a biochemical and send it out tomorrow, we would do further studies. People refer to it sometimes as phase 4 or ongoing clinical trials, which is a great process, great way to do things, because that's the recall system. So there's things that are genuinely just too rare and you don't catch them, and that's expected. But that doesn't get communicated very well. So when shit happens and all of the regulators just kind of shrug and go, yeah, well, this is part of like kind of how things work, and then everyone gets mad, and then they pause it, and then everyone reads that as like, hey, this means that this vaccine is bad. No, this is just our process. We're going to do some more reviews, some studies. We're going to look at the exact thing and then probably reopen it. Johnson & Johnson was probably pooping their pants for like a day, and then the FDA called them like, keep making it, but like just like you have a week off, but keep building it so we can send more out next week.
Yeah.
The other way is, yep.
Oh no, continue. I'll say my stuff in a sec.
The other way to kind of look at it is by just the probabilities of things. So it was 6 occurrences, all in women, and it was out of 7, I think it was 6.87 million doses in arms, there was these 6 events. And the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is kicking people's fucking asses. Like if you get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, or if you get the Pfizer Moderna, you're kind of like down for a day, maybe 2 days, you kind of feel like shit and then you're fine. The Johnson & Johnson one has been putting people on their fucking asses. Like it's been putting the work in on people. But that means it's working, and it's an experimental vaccine, part of the show. But so there's these severe ones, and then there's these critical ones. But if you look at just the numbers, the 6 out of 7 million, it comes out to be like you are twice as likely to get struck by lightning than you are to have a severe blood clot caused by the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And at what point do you kind of got to go, well, that's an acceptable amount of risk?
Exactly. That's what I was going to kind of get at. It's just like, well, 6 people out of 6
7
million,
million.
like 7 million. That's really small. Like, come on. Like
It's much more dangerous that you drove to work today than you to get that vaccine.
Yeah.
Especially
everyone
considering
likes to be
you're
mad at
blackout
vaccines.
drunk.
Yeah, Marcus.
Fucking
You
degenerate.
partied last night? You consumed the alcohol last night with your pals? What a
Devil
shame.
Slicker.
yeah.
Can't believe you did that.
I drink that. Something called the Devil Slicker. Yeah, I drink it. Right.
No response with that, Marcus? Because I was with you.
I know.
really-
I have some chicken to go
Great
grill.
Ooh.
Get some chicken to go grill?
And mac and cheese. We bought some mac and cheese from Costco. I'm going to throw it on the grill and see what happens.
Are you going to take it out of the box first?
Nope.
Good luck with that.
Well, so they
Yeah.
have they sell like ready to cook stuff. So
Oh, that's
it's
fun.
in like a tinfoil pan and it has a plastic lid.
Oh, that'd
So
be nice.
take
Oh,
plastic
that
lid
sounds
off.
amazing.
It's
Yeah,
pretty
it
good.
does. It'll
Sorry.
be good on the grill, too. But yeah. So takeaways from today. Don't be fat.
Yeah,
Eat
fuck
better.
you. If you're fat, lose some weight.
Taxes, still bad?
Yeah.
Mark?
Yeah.
Thanks. It's still bad conceptually? Okay.
I mean, there's a level of appropriate taxation, but most taxation does not fall at appropriate levels.
Overall theft, though.
Yes,
Different
it's
level.
still theft. Like, even appropriate taxation is still theft.
Okay. And, and then keep an eye out on that J&J vaccine. If you're going to get it, take the next day off, at least. And, yeah, it's probably still dramatically more safe than driving to work, so.
Yeah, and just unlike, unsubscribe, and leave a really nasty comment.
But don't bring up their weight, because that's fatphobic.
Fuck
Yeah.
them.
Hey, there's people
Just-
studying fat.
If you
there's
do-
like fat studies now.
If you do bring up their weight, just provide them with the appropriate resources, because then you're not presenting them with a problem, you're presenting them with a solution.
There it is. You're not whining if you present them with a solution.
You're not bullying them because they're fat. You're helping.
I believe in your ability to get better, fatty.
Bye. Blackjack.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah.